An ecosystem is the interactions between living and non-living things in a particular environment. There are many different kinds of biotic interactions between living organisms in an ecosystem. Individual organisms live together in an ecosystem, depend on one another and have many different types of interactions with each other. And many of these interactions are critical for their survival. Interacting species have a tremendous influence on the size of each other's populations. The influence of biotic interactions can occur at two different levels. Interspecific effects are direct interactions between species, and the intraspecific effects represent interactions of individuals within a single species. There are different types of interactions in the biotic community. It can be positive, negative or neutral. In the positive interactions, one of the species helps the other in one way or other. In the negative interactions, one of the species harms the other in one way or other. The other species is harmed or benefited or unaffected. In the neutral interaction, the species is neither harmed nor benefited. Neutralism. Neutralism occurs when two populations interact without having an effect on the evolutionary fitness of each other. An example of neutralism is interaction between a rainbow trout and dandelion in a mountain valley, or cacti and tarantulas living in the desert. Mutualism. Associations between pairs of species that bring mutual benefit. The individuals in the pair of each mutualistic species grow and or survive and or reproduce at a higher rate when in the presence of individual of the other species. Mutualistic interactions between species can be of two types: symbiotic or non-symbiotic. In a symbiotic mutualism, individuals interact physically and their relationship is biologically essential for survival. The symbiosis is defined as the process in which two organisms of different species are present and in which both the organisms are benefited and at least one member of the pair cannot live without close contact with the other. For example, lichens showing fungal algal symbiosis. The morphological structure of lichen is a mass of fungal hyphae that forms around a small colony of algae cells. In this mutualism, the alga produces carbohydrates and other food byproducts through photosynthesis and metabolism, while the fungus absorbs the required minerals and water to allow for these processes to occur. One more example is nitrogen fixation, which occurs in the root nodules of legumes, leaf nodules of ardisia, roots of the cycas, etc. In legumes, it is carried out by the rhizobium bacteria. They live freely and are not able to fix the nitrogen. The root nodules help in the nitrogen fixation. The food and shelter to the bacteria is provided by the legume. both the bacteria and legume are benefited. Likewise, association is shown by Anabaena blue-green alga, which works in association with azolla in nitrogen fixation. Mycorrhizae is the mutualistic association of a fungus with the root of higher plant. In this relationship, the fungus helps the plant in extracting certain nutrients from the soil. In exchange, the fungus is provided with the habitat and nutrition in the form of carbohydrates. More common in nature is the non-symbiotic mutualism. In this interaction, the mutualists live independent lives yet cannot survive without each other. The most obvious example of an interaction of this type is the relationship between flowering plants and their insect pollinators. Protocooperation. Protocooperation is defined as the process in which two organisms of different species are present and in which both the organisms are mutually benefited and they can live independently. Protocooperation is the form of mutualism, but the cooperating species do not depend on each other for survival. An example of protocooperation happens between soil bacteria or fungi and the plants that occur growing in the soil. Another example is sea anemone Adamsia, which gets attached to the molluscan shell of hermit crab Eupagurus. The sea anemone gives protection to the crab and hermit crab in turn carries it to the new feeding grounds. Commensalism. The process in which two organisms of different species are present and in which one organism is benefited while the other one acts as a neutral organism. It is neither harmed and nor benefited. An example of commensalism is the numerous bacteria that live on the skin and in the digestive tract of humans without being pathogenic or beneficial. They are innocuous bacteria living in commensalism with humans. Commensalism may involve the shelter or support, epiphytes on trees, and transportation, pollen carried by insects or birds. The commensalism that involves the obtainment of shelter is also called inquilinism. Commensalism. Commensalism is an interaction where one species suffers and the other interacting species experiences no effect. There are two basic modes: competition, in which a larger or stronger organism excludes a smaller or weaker one from living space or deprives it of food, and antibiosis, in which one organism is unaffected but the other is damaged or killed by a chemical secretion. This mode of inhibition occurs with the use of allochemics. For example, the growth of Staphylococcus is inhibited by the use of penicillin secreted by mold Penicillium notatum. An example is the black walnut Juglans nigra, which secretes juglone, a substance that destroys many herbaceous plants within its root zone. Competition. Utilization of the same resources, for example, food, water, nesting space or ground space, by organisms of the same or different species living together in a community when the resources are in limiting supply. When two or more organisms in the same community seek the same resource seeking it, they compete with one another. The competition between the organisms of the same species is referred as an intraspecific competition. This type of competition is very severe as the organism of the same species has the same requirement for food, water, shelter, light, etc. The competition between the organisms of the different species is referred as an interspecific competition. The intraspecific competition regulates the size of population by decreasing the birth and survival rate. Predation, interaction between the members of different species. In this, one member catches the prey and kills them. They are known as predators. Parasitism is the ecological interaction in which one individual mutilates or kills another to get food. Predation is a negative ecological interaction since one participant is harmed. Herbivory is comparable to predation, but herbivores do not necessarily kill a plant but sometimes put pressure on the plant species. Parasitism, the process in which two organisms of different species are present and in which one of the organism acts as a parasite and the other organism acts as a host. The food is obtained from the host. The parasite spends a part or their full life in the body of the host. Parasites may be characterized as ectoparasites, including ticks, fleas, leeches and lice, which live on the body surface of the host and do not themselves commonly cause disease in the host, or they may be called as endoparasites, which may be either intercellular, inhabiting spaces in the host's body, or intracellular, inhabiting cells in the host body. Intracellular parasites such as bacteria or viruses often rely on a third organisms known as the carrier or a vector to transmit them from the host. Malaria, which is caused by a protozoan of the genus Plasmodium, transmitted to humans by the bite of an Anopheles mosquito, is an example of this type of interaction. Scavenging is defined as the process of feeding on dead and decay remains. The animal which feed on the dead flesh is called scavenger. Vultures are the main animals which act as scavenger. The animals such as crows and ants are omnivorous. They feed on the dead and decayed bodies. The lion is followed by the jackal and hyenas. They eat the flesh on the body of animal. They also act as a predator. It is difficult for them to capture the larger animals like the zebra, etc. The scavenging is very helpful in cleaning the environment. It acts on the dead bodies and prevent the wastage. Coming to the conclusion, naturally no organism exists in complete isolation, and every organism must interact with the environment and other organisms. An organism's interaction with its environment are essential to the survival of that organism and the functioning of the ecosystem altogether. These interactions are important as they maintain food chain or food webs, control the population of an organism, allow organism to protect each other and provide earth with its natural resources.